Alright, hello. This is Destroy All Humans, something I never thought I'd get to say, but here we are. They actually went and remade it. And yes, if you're curious, this is in fact a remake and not a remaster. It is an entirely new game on a new engine with new assets, but very close to the original, very recognizable, with some differences, and we'll get onto that a little bit later. But first off, it's Destroy All Humans, a very fantastic sort of sandboxy alien invasion simulator from 2005, I believe it was. I think it was about 15 years ago. That I played a lot of when I was younger. I was 15 years ago. I was 13 when this came out. And yeah, I remember being very impressed with all of the particle effects and the very silly dialogue and everything. And it's super cool to see it remade because it was one of those sort of cult classics for a long time. That one of the many PlayStation 2 games that people remember fondly, but we haven't seen much of in terms of like, franchise renewal or anything for a long time. And of course, you could go back to the direction that the Destroy All Humans franchise eventually went, unfortunately, but still, there really weren't that many. Even the ones that aren't super great are still not bad, and they were quite a while ago. So here we are with a remake of the original. And if you don't know what Destroy All Humans is, you've never played it, it is a sandbox kind of thing. It's not exactly open world. It's the early to mid PlayStation 2 life cycle where open world was still only some games could do it, and a lot of games tried to go for self-contained sandboxes and stuff instead, and that's exactly what this game did. So you don't have one contiguous open world, rather you have a bunch of individual locations that you can visit that are each quite open and very carefully designed, and it has a mission-based structure where you will go to each of these individual locations and do various missions in each. And you'll also, after you do the first mission for each location, unlock the ability to explore it as a sandboxy area that has its own missions. It's like side missions and collectibles and stuff to find, as well as just being able to screw around if you want to. And this game keeps that exact same structure and has the similar sort of, gathering of DNA from human brains and upgrading yourself in between missions and then you have the various side missions and things that are meant to help you get DNA to upgrade yourself in between the major missions, and then the big story events that go along. And will unlock new mechanics and new weapons and new saucer upgrades and things as you go through. So, how does it hold up? Well, the original Destroy All Humans was a very interesting beast because it was about being the bad guy. It was about being an alien. You are, in fact, an alien invader. Basically, well, I mean, it's in the name of the game, isn't it? And it has a very specific sense of humor. It's very early Nickelodeon Invader Zim kind of humor. In fact, you will recognize some of the voice actors in this game as voice actors from some of those classic cartoons. So it's got some very dark humor, but it's also very just silly, very comical. It's not something you can take seriously because it's not meant to be taken seriously. It is funny and lighthearted while also being having a good amount of black humor and stuff in it. It's just a really fun game, and it's very much it's a snapshot of 2005, right? This is 2005 game development, 2005 humor, pre-internet meme kind of humor and everything. It's very much a snapshot of that time period, and it's really cool to see it remade with a lot of that intact because you don't really get games like this much anymore. This whole contained sandbox screw around simulator sort of idea, and it's neat to actually see it back and very intact. I did mention some changes though, so let's go through what is the same and what is different. The first thing that you'll realize that's the same is actually the voice acting. They kept all of the original voice acting, which some people might not like, but personally, I'm not sure if this is an unpopular opinion, but to me, I actually prefer it that way because I find it very strange when remasters and remakes have newly recorded lines mixed in with the old lines, and it just sounds very jarring and weird when the recording quality is suddenly much better all of a sudden for a couple of scenes. And the voices might be a little bit different because the voice actors are older or they couldn't get all the original voice actors. And you have that mixed in with some of the original voice acting and it's immediately obvious which is which, and it's really strange. I don't really care if it's old or new voice acting as much as I care about it being consistent. So either entirely old or entirely new, because mixing them up just sounds odd to me. And to be real, it's not really all that financially feasible to try and get all of the old voice actors back together to re-record the entire game, especially because a lot of the times you wouldn't be able to find them. Also, imagine if, for instance, you had Crypto, the original voice actor for Crypto, doing a new rendition of his old self, and then every time you scanned someone, those were side voice actors, you would get the old voice acting again. So you would have a mixture between crispy new Crypto and old grainy voice actors from 2005, and it would just sound really jarring and strange. This is exactly what happened with the Tales of Vesperia remaster, which is an excellent game and a really good remaster, but it's very clear which lines were recorded more recently and which ones were original to the game, and it just sounds weird, especially because they couldn't actually get Troy Baker to reprise his role as Yuri, so some of the new lines have a completely different voice with a completely different direction and cadence, and it's just jarring. So I actually don't mind that all of the original voice acting is in here because it was good. It's very funny, the writing is hilarious, and the voice actors did a really good job of portraying these very cartoonish characters in very enjoyable ways, so I don't see a reason to replace all of that, especially if you can only do some of it because of the financial infeasibility of getting every single voice actor back on board for a whole new thing. Another thing that's basically the same is the overall mission structure of the game. The same missions are in, although there are some differences. One of the ones that jumped out at me as an example is there is a mission fairly early on where you have to bend the aerials on top of houses to the Furon mothership to get a certain broadcast that will explode people's heads. And in the original, you had to do that in your saucer. You actually hovered above the houses and used the sort of abducto beam on the bottom of your saucer to bend the antenna. But in the remake here, you actually do it on foot, which is kind of interesting because the original mission was a fairly quick, not very involved mission since you just flew over the roofs and pressed a button, but now you actually have to walk up to them and sort of PK them into their new shape. So it's the same mission, but you go about it in a different way, and there's even a bonus where you basically have to play the floor is lava, where you're supposed to jetpack and dash around the rooftops without touching the ground, and you get some extra DNA for that. That's another bit of a new thing, is that all these missions have all kinds of new optional objectives for extra DNA that you can complete. Some of them are very creative, some of them are just do it perfectly, and some are very difficult, but it's nice to have all these extra things that make you sort of think outside of the box sometimes and make you do things in a bit of a different way than you normally would in order to get some better DNA for all those upgrades, those sweet upgrades. So yeah, some of the other things that are different, and I'm going off of very old memory here, so some of this could be wrong, but just from what I recall, some of the things that are different include your mind powers no longer have a meter. And in the original game, you had a sort of like a mental mana, and you had to wait for it to refill. And I believe wasn't it that if you scanned people's minds, it refilled it? I don't quite remember. But anyway, that's gone now. You can actually use your mind powers as much as you want, which is actually really cool because it makes you feel more powerful. You are supposed to be this superior alien race, so it does feel nice to be able to just throw all sorts of stuff around the room all the time and not have to worry about a meter. But to make it to where you can't just spam these things and make yourself vastly overpowered, you do have a sort of a cast time for your abilities now instead. So certain things, especially more powerful ones like the ability to distract people, the ability to make people follow you, stuff like that, and your hollow bob to take the form of other humans, they all have a certain amount of time it takes to cast them. Different ones have different amounts of time. So you can't just spam them. Even though you don't have this meter anymore, you do have to now sort of worry about not getting caught because of the time it takes to cast these things, which I actually like. I prefer that to the meter because it definitely makes you think about when to use certain things, and since stealth is a surprisingly common aspect of a lot of the missions, with you having to take human forms and not get spotted, either for bonus objectives or just because you can't let your notoriety get to a certain degree, so you have to be disguised as often as possible, it makes you think a lot about how to position yourself and what to do and who to distract and how to use these powers. It's nice, actually. The mission design fits the idea that you no longer have a meter, but instead have to position yourself in certain ways and wait certain amounts of time for these abilities to go off and then sort of move to not be spotted. It's actually pretty cool. Some other changes include you can now use your psychokinesis when you're doing anything other than walking. In the original game, you could only walk around and like lift stuff, but now you can still fire weapons, you can jetpack around and all that, and use PK at the same time, which fits with the overall combat design of the game being a bit more active and a bit more acrobatic. You'll notice that a lot of the other changes made to the mechanics all fit this sort of theme of making the combat more active and making you want to move around a lot more. Other changes that we'll get into in a second all sort of have that idea behind them. It's clear that that's what they're going for, and I think it does a pretty good job at that. And it gives you a bit more of an active element to the combat as well, because you can just tap the PK button, which is right-click on the mouse, and you'll just sort of have something hover above your head like a psychokinetic magazine, and then you don't have to worry about holding the button down for a while, and you can still use all of your other controls like firing and jetting around and everything, and then hold the button again whenever you want to sort of draw it from above your head and throw it at something, which is actually something that I've never seen a game that has a telekinetic power do. Most of the time, that's something that enemies do. They always have like stuff hovering above their heads that they can call upon to throw at you, but you as the player can almost never do that. So I actually think it's really cool that they let you do that and just sort of keep this passive magazine of a thing hovering above your head that you can call on whenever to throw at an enemy. And again, this is very clearly meant to make the combat feel more active, more involved, because of all the various things you can combine at once now, with the controls being a bit different to enable this sort of thing. You also have a dash now, something that you did not have in the original. You can use your jetpack fuel to dash in one direction as sort of a dodge move. And another mechanic added to this is the ability to hold the dash button to project this sort of frictionless barrier around your feet and skate around. And it's a lot of fun. It's a really fun way to get around. Although you do have to worry about getting shot, because that will drop this barrier. And eventually you can actually get an upgrade that allows you to skate indefinitely. So you can actually go around the places like this all the time. And in fact, the level design is very similar to the original, but there are some obvious changes to help to facilitate this new movement system, because you'll find like ramps and stuff here and there that are very clearly meant to have you skate around them. So they have actually thought of this and altered the level design a bit to make it more conducive for you to jet around the place like this. And like I said, this is another way the whole extra active movement thing seems to be a major focus of the remake and its control scheme, and I really like it. Skating around is very, very satisfying, and it makes getting around on foot a lot more fun and a lot quicker than in the original, because you no longer just have your jetpack. You can do all this nonsense, which is super cool. You also have a couple of changes to the way that weapons function, not just the way they look. Obviously the particle effects and things are going to be a bit different, but some of them work a bit differently. The ion detonator can be PK'd now and moved around. I don't remember if that was the case in the original, but I swore that it wasn't. I may be wrong, though I can't quite remember. And the Disintegrator Array works a little bit differently now. It's more like a rapid-fire, slightly seeking projectile that gains damage the longer you use it and can set things on fire. Your Zap-O-Matic can still chain between targets, but it has a bit of a different upgrade scheme and can now actually amplify its damage as it chains, and depending on the amount of charge it has, it actually gets more damage and with later upgrades. Your saucer has a repulsion field that it can activate to destroy projectiles that are close to you. The other saucer weapons work pretty much the same, although they definitely made the Quantum Deconstructor look really cool now. It's got a very cool effect to it. It was already pretty impressive in the original for the time, but now it's even cooler looking and still very green. And you also can hold control to look straight down in the saucer and actually fire all of your weapons, including the main disintegrator beam, which is useful, directly downwards. So you can actually hover over stuff and fire directly down and go in for like bombing runs and stuff now, which is kind of cool. They also made it to where the saucer no longer passively regenerates shield. You actually have to draw it from other vehicles. You get this charge ability that allows you to just target vehicles and then mash the R key to drain them and eventually destroy them, and it restores your saucer shield in bursts. So that's another element that the combat has been changed to be a bit more active, with the whole repulsion field and charging your shield from other vehicles and things. It's clear what they're going for here, and I think they've done it really, really well. And that kind of brings me to the overall vibe of this. What sort of remake it is a bit different from the standard, more nostalgia-baiting remake, you could say. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but this is going for a bit of a different feel. This is not the sort of warts-and-all remake that tries to one-to-one recreate the old game as close as physically possible, even putting in some of the stuff that people maybe didn't like. Because, let's be real here, how we remember things isn't always how they actually were. Chances are, we remember the parts that we liked a lot more, and the things that frustrated us or the things that we didn't enjoy and didn't do all that often, we don't remember as well. Our childhood memories are often idealized versions of things, and if we go back to enjoy those original things, we'll more than likely find that they still stand up, but that everything isn't exactly how we remembered. And I feel that this type of remake, the Destroy All Humans type of remake, is not the warts and all, but is instead the kind of remake that understands all of the stuff that people really liked about the original and tries to recreate it as faithfully as possible, while also knowing that it wasn't perfect and is willing to make some gameplay changes to change things up a little bit. It's not supposed to be the exact same game as close as you can physically get it with no differences besides graphics and stuff. It's a little bit more involved than that. There's more to it than just remaking the original one-to-one. It's more about taking, fiddly enough, extracting from our childhood brains the things that we liked and maybe polishing up some of the rougher parts that we don't remember as well. There are some gameplay changes here. It is not exactly the same game, and I think it's better for it. It's not that the original game was bad. I loved the original game, but it's also okay to remake something and not have it exactly the same as it was, and I think that I actually like it more this way because of some of the new things they've been able to do. This whole dash and skating thing is really fun. The new level design to go along with it is super cool. The fact that they actually restored a cut mission, making the remake a bit more about what the game could have been rather than exactly what it was. The new controls for the saucer and some of the way the weapons work is fun. It's just a little bit different in ways that I really appreciate, and it's okay because the original game isn't going anywhere, so if I want to play it exactly how it was, I can still go play that. So I'm glad to have something that actually is willing to take what we loved and change the rest of it up just a little bit. to make it a little bit different. It shows some understanding of the original product and why people liked it, and also that it wasn't perfect and it's okay to maybe alter some stuff here and there and see what happens. This is a fantastic remake that is faithful to what made the original game fun, so people that enjoyed it back in the day can still enjoy it in the exact same way now, with all the silly dialogue and all the fun missions and the anal probe, and everything is still in there. But it's also feels more like a modern game, and that's fine. I think it's really cool what they've done. So, and also for $30, it's pretty cheap and cheerful, to be honest, because, you know, it was $60 originally, and it's not exactly a small game with all of these little sandboxes for you to explore and stuff, so I feel like $30 is more than fair for what you're getting here. It's been remade with a lot of tact, with a lot of understanding, and I think that encouraging this type of remake is exactly what I want to do, because I really, really like it. And also, to be honest, I really want to see the same thing done with Destroy All Humans 2, because I actually enjoyed the sequel more, even though I played this a lot back in the day. I like the sequel even more, and I also seem to recall that there was a sort of tinfoil hat hippie mission-giving character in the sort of 1960s Haight-Ashbury parody area called Coyote Bongwater, and that has stuck with me to this day because that's one of the best names for any NPC in any game ever created, and the world needs the return of Destroy All Humans 2 and Coyote Bongwater. And Dark Voodoo. I don't know if that's what we deserve, but we need it. I mean, I'll go into the studio myself and record Coyote's lines all over again if that's what it takes to get that remake made. But I would love to see this same very faithful, very fun treatment given to the sequel as well. I hope this sells well enough to maybe have that into consideration, because these guys have done a really good job when it comes to remaking this game in a way that's still extremely fun, but also manages to add in some injections of modernity without it feeling weird, you know? So that's the Destroy All Humans remake. It is absolutely worth your time, and even if you've never played the original, so you have no nostalgia for it, no connection to it, it's a really fun, sandboxy, alien invasion, be a giant dick to everyone simulator where you get to pop people's heads and eat their brains, and what's not to like about that? So please do go check it out. The link is in the description below this video. Like I said, it's $30, which seems more than fair for the kind of fun that you're going to be having if you enjoy this sort of thing like I do. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.